So, hello, fellow Earthlings. This is Earthling 6455463728. And Jewish success. Is it a blessing or is it a curse? So, I have been through the rabbit holes. I saw a article where I guess it's Seth Rogen was talking about how he was um, in an elevator with this other guy from one of those movies, and this other comedian, Eddie Griffin, basically was saying that he was trying to get movies made and he couldn't get them made. It was an anti-Semitic rant, you could say. And at first, I was thinking to myself, I don't know if that's anti-Semitic. Basically, Eddie Griffin was saying, "Hey, I was trying to get movies, and I see you guys have gotten a bunch of movies made, and you know why? It's because you're Jewish, and I'm not, and that's the reason why. And you should tell the other Jewish people to let other people get movies made." So, yeah. At first, I was like, "Oh, I don't know that and then I thought, if you just replace all those things with black people. And you said you should tell the other black people to just let other people get movies made. Yeah, that wouldn't sound good. So I had to admit that, yeah, I guess it was anti-Semitic. But then I was like, what kind of influence? I guess I have to choose my words well because I already got a community strike with respect to a joke that I made, not about any Jewish people, not about Americans. I made a joke to say, and it's not really a joke, it's just a comparison between um, the Fuhrer and Donald Trump. And I was saying that whereas Donald Trump tried and succeeded in getting out of the army, um, Hitler actually wanted to go into the army. He couldn't, and he tried harder, and he did well. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Anyway, my point is that yeah, I went to look and see how much influence Jewish people had in Hollywood. And I found a book and then I guess a movie that was made which was saying that, hey, Jewish people basically started Hollywood because they were limited in the options that they had to get into different businesses. And one of the businesses that they could get into was making movies, which is the reason why so many executives, CEOs, chairmen are of Jewish descent in Hollywood. And, I went looking further and I saw that, what's this guy's name? He's a comedy writer. I think it's Joel Stein. And he did an article in 2009, I think it was, where he was joking about how he had never been so upset because the number of people who believed that Jewish people ran Hollywood was at an all-time low. And it was a funny piece. But in this funny piece, he named um, a whole list of people who had signed an ad um, against SAG, I guess, the Screen Actors Guild. They were trying to negotiate with Actors Union, and all these influential people who happened to be Jewish, and I presume other people who weren't, had signed an ad in the papers of taking a particular point of view, and I was like, from Walt Disney, from NBC, from just so many different places, like 8 different people who were like the chairman of different media organizations, and I was like, wow. And in combination with what I had learned from, what was the name? An Empire of Their Own, I think is the name of the book, and then the movie about how um, there were Jewish moguls who uh, were the main players in Hollywood, and I was like, wow, I did not. had no idea. Um, so I thought, and then the movie, because I was not going to read a book. The movie went into the fact that the idea that there was a backlash against these people who were so successful in the movie industry, and I think this is when they were looking for communists and so on, and they had to be at the end in the movie they were saying, or the documentary, they were saying that these unfortunate Jewish people who were the head of Hollywood and these different media organizations had to become collaborators by creating blacklists for people who identified as being communists so that they couldn't work in the industry anymore. And I thought, wow, that's messed up. That's unfortunate. And then I kept looking for more stuff, and I saw, what is this lady's name? I wish I could pause. I used to be able to just pause and go find out something, but you can't pause in this audio recorder anymore. Sarah Silverman, this comedian, and she was talking about, I think it's in New Hampshire, that she grew up, and she was one of the only Jewish people there. And she said that there was a verb which was to Jew them down. I hope I'm not saying anything derogatory. And it was hurtful to her. But she was performing as a comedian even then. And in one of her performances, she finally said, Jew is not a verb. It's your friend, me. And from that point on, nobody ever used that term around her. Um, and then, she went into the fact that, hey, Jewish people are not even in the most successful ethnic group in the world or in the US. And that tied in with something that somebody else had said, which is that he said that someone who he called a bigot had said that Hollywood is ruled by Jewish people. And he's like, well, this guy completely, he had seen the same movie about an empire of their own, and he had missed this guy he's calling a bigot for saying that Jews ruled Hollywood was saying that this guy who was telling him that and thinking it was a compliment, he had missed the point, which is that Jewish people had not gone into it trying to own the business. They had gone into it because they didn't have many other options. And one of the funny things that I have seen completely aside from this many years ago, well, a couple of years ago, was that there was a time when Jewish people were in sports. They were in basketball. And they were supposedly, Jews can play well because that was another area where I guess it was easier for them to be involved in um, because for whatever reason, they were just allowed in that arena. Um, but when I heard that, what she said about ethnicity, Jewish people not being one of the most successful or richest ethnicities around it, I remembered what this guy was saying that, hey, Jewish people are not that influential after all. So here it was that it was confirmed that Jewish people had a lot of influence in Hollywood. Maybe, let's be real, they didn't control everything. Whoever can control anything because there are a whole bunch of different Jewish sects, I would imagine. There's the Hasidic, there are Reformed Jews, there are a whole bunch of different Jews. So just because somebody is a Jew is like saying you're a Christian. And the Christians run a particular thing. Okay, well, these Christians happen to be Episcopalians, and those other Christians happen to be Baptists, and those other Christians happen to be Methodists and Adventists and Mormons, people consider Mormons Christians, and those other Christians are Catholic, and those other Christians are Anglican, and those other Christians are whatever. So when you say Jew and people lump all these Jews together, hey, Jews, yeah, but do they actually think of themselves as being the same group? Because, they are in Israel, they're right now in Israel, they had so much trouble to pick a government. They've had, what is it, like 5 different elections? And now they finally decided, somebody has finally come up with a way to oust Netanyahu. So, I mean, from that perspective, it's kind of like, okay, most of the people, if not all of the people who vote um, in Israel happen to be Jews. And they've had 5 elections back to back to back because they couldn't vote in or agree on enough people to have a government. And why why should we be worried about any denomination um, being having any prominence in the world if there isn't that much cohesion? There's breaks and problems within a family, within siblings, far less all of these different Jewish groups. On the other hand, though, um, so I went looking to see how successful are Jewish people in terms of religions. And on that end, understanding that there are probably a bunch of different um, splits amongst Jews, Jewish people by a wide margin um, have are wealthy. I think I can't come down to the exact numbers, but I'm going to try to break it down. Out of Jewish people, Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, Methodists, Mormons, all there's a breakdown. And the group with, I think it's the number one highest amount of education, are Jewish people. Um, Number two, the highest income. So, for example, I think it's a 44% of Jewish families earn above whatever limit it was, according to Pew Research, above, I want to say 75 to 100,000 and above. The next group below that was Hindus, who make their families, or 36% of their families, make more than between 75,000 and 100,000 and above. And it just went down from there. I think the group that had families with lowest income levels were Jehovah's Witnesses. So from that perspective, I think, and it's to be expected, not every person who is designated born in any particular group knows everything about any particular group. So I'm listening to Sarah Silverman, and sorry, Sarah Silverman, you're wrong. And for people who dislike Jewish people, that is not. It's like fodder for them then, because when you look at the numbers and you see that Jewish people are the most educated and have families that earn the most in terms of, and then worse again from that perspective is that I looked at the billionaires in the world, and in 2013, I think according to Forbes 400, Jewish people accounted for um, about 35% of the billionaires in the US. So I think it was they started, somebody got a screenshot, and from 1987, Jewish people maybe accounted for let's say 19 or 18% of the billionaires in the US, I think. Understanding, of course, that Jewish people account for 2% of the population of the US. I don't know what it was in 1987, but around these times now, Jewish people account for about 2% of the population of the US. But they account for, in 1987, let's say 18% of the billionaires in the world, in the US. Then, like I said, when you go to 2009, 2010, maybe to 2013, Jewish people, at this time I would presume 2% of the US population, account for a third of the billionaires in the US. So, yikes. That is not good for, Jewish people who might be claiming that they are just like everybody else. Then it kind of gets a little bit worse because when you look, I think this was for 2019, when you look at the people who are the top 10 people, billionaires in America, 5 of them are Jewish people. So, yeah, for people who are anti-Semitic, um, that is not like something that Jewish people can say, hey, we're not really doing that well. So there's that. I personally would like it. It clearly is not. I think they did a survey. There was a survey amongst the things that I was looking at that was trying to decipher, okay, what is the difference? Because I wanted to know what is the difference in Jewish families that account for success, that they're having financial success. And they were saying on a bunch of different markers in terms of what they looked at in the survey, they couldn't find any difference, any substantial difference. Only thing that I saw was this vague, they had a focus for their kids, on their kids learning self-reliance, self-dependence, whatever the case might be. So as my interest goes, hopefully I can see why it's the case that that Jewish people are so successful. Of course, a lot of Jewish people come from very, very humble means. Like people who are Russian Jewish people, for example, of Russian Jewish descent. They lived in really bad conditions in Russia. They certainly did not hold prestigious positions in Russia. So I don't know how it is that Jewish people are successful. What I do know is, Sarah Silverman, in describing her experiences, she was right. She was right because at the end of the day, a Jewish person is just a person. They're a person who has this heritage. Of course, there are a lot of people who have Jewish heritage, and they have no idea, and they don't think that that they're Jewish, because Jewish people have been converting forever, for whatever reason, to gain, the advantage of not being singled out. And one of the things too that, I wanted to get into is that here it is that Jewish people are successful, and people often hate them for that. And black people are not as successful, and people often hate them for that. And I don't know if the reason for that success and the lack of success that black people have, if it might be the same reason. If people look at black people and they're like, you can't, and that's what manifests. And people look at Jewish people and they're like, you can, and that is what manifests. I don't know, but I feel like I want to find out. I don't know if I'm actually going to continue and continue down that road and find out, but I am very interested in finding out why. If you know, and this is the silly thing about what I guess can be called anti-Semitism or prejudice or whatever it is. You know, I might say something even misogynistic, or I don't know what the word for anti-female is. I think misogynistic sounds so heavy, but yeah, it's probably not a good idea for Jewish people to be successful. I mean, there's so many of the resources that I got were from Jewish people. So like I would go to, Australia Jewish organization or Jerusalem this or the Jewish this, and that's where I got information as to how successful Jewish people are. And unfortunately, of course, some people who are anti-Semitic will use those sources of information to say, oh, and view these things in a negative light. Anyway, um, maybe this video will get my channel banned. Let's see. Thanks for listening. Peace.